Good afternoon, morning, evening, everyone, wherever you may be at in the world. We have a special guest here today, Melissa Kutcher-Rinehart, head gymnastic coach at University of Denver. Um, this topic is resilience and growth mindset. And let's have Melissa, you can introduce yourself briefly here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So my name, as you mentioned, is Melissa Kutcher-Rinehart, and I am the head women's gymnastics coach here at the University of Denver. And I can give you just a quick couple of seconds about my background. I'm born and raised in Florida, competed at the University of Florida, and then was the assistant coach at University of Michigan for about 5 years. Ended up getting my master's degree in athletic administration at Wayne State University in Detroit, and then headed here to Denver as the head coach and have enjoyed absolutely every minute of it. So I'm thrilled to be here talking about actually, my favorite topics of growth mindset and resiliency. And funny enough, I love to read. So I've read a lot of books, and certainly one of the reasons I appreciate you having me is I fully recognize I'm not a PhD. I'm not someone who studies this and an expert in this field. But I do hope that I can contribute something in today's conversation about the lived and life experiences of this, especially as it pertains to athletes, but transferable skills that would hopefully work for or just be a thought for people who aren't even in athletics. So thanks for the opportunity to address those two wonderful, amazing, and important topics of growth mindset and resiliency.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, and we're going to just jump right into the first question. So what is resilience, and how does it shape you and those around you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I kind of refer to resilience and growth mindset, not just in one word, but to me, it encompasses a lot of grit, perseverance, persistence, determination, integrity. To me, those are all part of the growth mindset resilience piece. So, the traditional definition of that would be to recover from difficulties quickly or adapting well in the face of adversity. I look at accountability and can also accountability piece of resiliency and growth mindset, and the competitiveness of resiliency and growth mindset can be a big advantage in those areas. I look at it in terms of communication, motivation, the ability to inspire others around you, to build and connect a culture. I think that's one way to create resiliency and one way to establish a growth mindset. And I think there are many types, right? There can be psychological, emotional, physical resiliency that improve mental health and wellness, but how it affects academics. So we talk a lot in our program about the ability to refocus thoughts, right? Everyone has multiple thoughts all the time. Can you catch yourself? And can you have the ability to refocus those thoughts? I think that's a big part of resiliency and a big part of growth. Noticing them, not punishing yourself or beating yourself up when you have those thoughts, but saying, how can I show compassion to myself? How can I be kind to myself? How can I try to find those areas, those silver linings, that attitude of gratitude, and those things? And I feel like a little bit of that helps resiliency. One of the other things we look at in athletics is looking at things as an opportunity. This is an opportunity to grow. And when you kind of can look at things under an opportunity instead of a have to, I think sometimes that can also build a level of resiliency. So you don't have to compete, you get to compete. You get this opportunity. How can we make the most of this opportunity? And then a lot of what we talk about in resiliency athletics is thriving under pressure, right? The ability to compete with freedom. And I think that is such an important resiliency perspective and growth perspective, because that's one of the beauties of what athletics can provide. It's hard. It is truly hard when you know you're out there and your team's counting on you, or your coaches, or your university, you're wanting to represent your university well, and you're feeling all that pressure. And how do you handle that pressure? How do you have that positive self-talk? How do you, again, refocus the thoughts? And when we can get to a point where we get to tell them, you've done all the hard work, like trust yourself, compete with freedom, that's also an area that they can bring into their life after athletics in terms of their ability to build resiliency.
Yeah, I love that. I love the piece that you spoke about, like the ability to grow together to create a resilient culture. We often think of like individuals rather than collectives, right? So building that growing together resilient culture piece really hits upon some of the things that I think about. The second question here I have for you is, how does one build resilience? And that might be a tough question.
Yeah, yeah. I would have the PhD if I knew how to answer that question. Um, I can only give you my thoughts on that, and I think it's different for everyone. And I think that's what the beauty of it is finding out what works for you as an individual. How can you, as an individual, build resiliency, show that growth mindset, and then how can you share like we're doing now, right? Sharing those ideas and thoughts that might help others. So some of them is shared experiences, right? When you have those shared experiences, it's a way to build resiliency, whether that's wins and losses in a competition, whether that's coming together in a group project in a classroom. How do those shared experiences build resiliency? And I think there is really important. If you fail and you get back up and you try again, those experiences are one of the ways to build resiliency. Team and personal values and philosophy. I think one of the best ways to build resiliency too is by knowing what are your personal values, right? What are your team's values? What are your personal values? And then you can reflect back. Am I meeting these values? Where can I improve in these values? How can, again, I show kindness and compassion to myself about these values? But I think sometimes growth mindset and resiliency tied into knowing who you are and knowing what your values are, either individually or your shared values as part of a team, are really important to building that resiliency because it gives you a place to fall back on and gives you a foundation. Building a structure, and that's kind of what I was talking about in regards to a foundation. I think a lot of, honestly, self-awareness. In the gymnastics program, we do a lot of personal assessments, and I love doing those kinds of personal assessments. And they give you feedback on, what are your colors or what are your strengths or where, whatever. There's so many great personal assessments out there. And I think the more self-reflective you are, the more you know about yourself, the more it gives you the opportunity to kind of build those resiliencies. I'm big on journaling. Some people like that, some people don't, but I think sometimes putting your ideas, even if you don't want to write your ideas out, but having someone to talk to about those ideas, having someone to bounce those off of is a good form of resiliency. Again, in the gymnastics specific program, we do like a SWOT analysis where we talk about your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You can do that as a team collectively. You can do that as an individual. So that could be one way. Sometimes recognizing and knowing it are parts of building the resiliency. And then a big one we talk about is adaptability, right? Can you be flexible and proactive when unexpected situations arise? And that's usually when we all feel it. When things are running smoothly, we're most of the time okay. But when we have these unexpected situations and all of a sudden we do have to pivot at the last minute, or we do have to be adaptable, and can we do that? And can we do that with a sense of confidence? Can we do that with living in the moment, being in the present, not focusing on the past or in the future, but kind of being in the moment? I'm big on resources and building those connections. So when you ask, again, it's a complicated question, how does one build resiliency? But I think having the resources, and that's what we kind of talked about, do you have someone to talk to? And it doesn't have to necessarily, it can be a mental health professional, it can be a psychologist, it can be a life coach or a high performance coach. But what can you do in terms of utilizing your resources? A last couple of thoughts in terms of building resiliency that I really like is goal setting. I think it's really important to set little daily goals as well as the more short-term and long-term goals, because maybe it's just a daily goal and you can say, did I reach this daily goal? And you can feel on that day a sense of accomplishment that you did do something that was meaningful. That can build a little bit of resiliency. But looking at that short-term and long-term goals and finding, honestly, meaningful goals to you. They have to work for you. They have to be meaningful goals for you. Finding a release, I think in athletics is so important for us. It's exercise, but what is that? Is that exercise? Is that nutrition? Is that sleep? Is that meditation or sense of mindfulness and spirituality? But I think all those things to me, in whatever form works for the individual, are really, really important in terms of building resiliency, taking care of yourself, right? Inside and outside. Sleep, nutrition, meditation are all really key points. And again, I also am big on an attitude of gratitude. I mentioned that earlier, but that's something that we talk a lot about on our team, finding the silver linings, that positive self-talk. And sometimes it's hard to do, right? It's hard to find those silver linings and find, but what can you truly feel like you're blessed for? Maybe it's just this day. Maybe it's just you got out of bed and now we're, starting the day, whatever it might be, but finding those silver linings. And then the knowledge and vulnerability to be brave and courageous and be authentic to yourself. I think those are very big key points in building resiliency. It's hard to build that till you really know who you are, and everyone is striving to work on that on a daily basis. Hopefully we all can continue to grow and learn who we are through a lifetime, right? It's not an outcome, it's a journey and it's a process, and being engaged in that process of self-reflection and being engaged in that process of knowledge. And then from there, I think, even expressing a sense of vulnerability, I think can lead to a sense of bravery and courage that can build resiliency. So sorry for the long answer, but there's, I think for different people, it's different things, but those are some of the ideas within Denver Gymnastics.
Yeah, I love that you hit upon some of this holistic aspect of a person, whether it's reflection, whether it's finding your journey, whether it's nutrition and well-being. So this question is huge. So I appreciate all the multitude and ideas and ways to find ourselves better to build that resilience. So my last question here, with you being the head women's gymnastic coach at DU, how do you encourage resilience building for a team and individual who may be at different points of resilience building?
Yeah, that's such a great question and a relevant one, because obviously we have seniors that are graduating and entering the real world, so to speak, and then we have freshmen coming in, and we do have different people at different levels of self-growth or building resiliency. And so I think that is a really relevant question. I think knowing your, philosophy is important. Again, and so our team's philosophy is to build a championship tradition based on a foundation of teamwork, character, and excellence. So knowing that teamwork, character, and excellence are the three most important things in our program, we will build action steps around that. And so it doesn't really matter where you are. We're constantly reinforcing not just the words, but hopefully the action steps behind that with standards that we have, whether those are standards from practice or whether those are standards from competition. Really for everyone, because I think this never gets old, and we're all, especially coaches. Coaches have a tendency to be very competitive, as I would say for myself. And so having to remind myself of this, I'm not always as good as I'd like to be. However, reminding our athletes it's really the truth. Like, failure is okay, right? Failure is a part of building success. Failure is a part of a path to success, and looking at failure differently than how we currently do. And instead of beating yourself up and feeling bad about it, how can we recognize that these disappointments and frustrations are actually critical to our building of resiliency and self-growth and our ability to reflect? And we probably wouldn't be successful if we don't allow ourselves these opportunities to have part of, again, failure is part of growth and success mindset. I think community involvement and community engagement are also really important in terms of where everyone is on an individual level and a team level. So we do a lot of community service, finding ways to give back, whether that's a food drive, whether that's, handing out water at Race for the Cure, whether that's volunteering at Children's Hospital. I think sometimes it offers perspective, and that works differently for each individual person. How do you take that experience? How do you view that perspective? But finding a way to give back to the community, I also think helps you have that attitude of gratitude, offers a level of perspective, and then in that, case can build resiliency. And then lastly, I would also say we have, and I listed some of my favorite ones for you for fun, but we do, as I mentioned on our team, we do read a lot of books. We listen to a lot of TED Talks. And so Angela Duckworth's a grit book is, one of my favorite. That's a way to build grit. I love Brene Brown. She has some fantastic books, Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Dare to Lead. So, and then one of my all-time favorites right now is The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. I absolutely love that one. I think it offers perspective. And then the last thing I'd say is using history as a reflection of things. Just recently, I remember during this COVID piece of and time frame, got to watch on PBS just this by Ken Burns, fantastic documentary on the Roosevelts, an intimate portrait of the Roosevelts. And sometimes reflecting on history also can add to give us perspective, build grit, build resiliency. No, we're not alone. No, we've gotten through these experiences collectively as a culture before, or community before, or an individual before. So whether that's looking at something broader with history, or looking something with even in your team or your community or your class in terms of, hey, what have we been through this before? We did well on this. We have been successful in the past. Here's what we've learned from these experiences. Here's how we can use them to move forward in an even better way, or more connected way, or more a growth, a way with more growth mindset attached to it.
Wow. I learned so much in this session, even though it was pretty short. So thank you so much for joining us today, Melissa. Your experiences, your life experiences, your position as a coach at the University of Denver has so much meaning in how we frame resilience and growth mindset. So again, thank you for that. As part of this asynchronous model, we do have some other videos that talk about resilience and growth mindset. So I can encourage you to keep on looking at those videos, and there will be some discussion questions at the bottom of this video. So make sure you reflect and reflect on some of the takeaways from this video. Again, thank you, Melissa, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me and for doing this for the community. We all appreciate it and look forward to watching these videos.
Perfect. Bye.